Hello and welcome to this episode of Groundbreakers with CGTN. I'm Zheng Chuiying live with Dalian, Liaoning Province. Today we'll continue to delve into the 2024 Summer Davos, which has attracted over 1,700 government and industry leaders. We'll zoom in on one of the major topics of the event, high technology. We're going to check out what are some of the opportunities ahead for the emerging markets and how is the innovation reshaping China and the rest of the world. And joining me here in the discussion today are our distinguished guests, Ms. Lord Casanova, I'm sorry if I wish I had it correct, the Senior Lecturer and the Director of the Emerging Markets Institute of the Cornell University of the United States of America. Welcome. And we also have Mr. Alex Javarokov, the PhD and the founder and CEO of the In Silico Medicine. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Dr. Pierre Panda, CEO and founder of the International Battery Company.
Yep, thanks.
Good to have you three on our show. So let me start by asking for the overall impression about this year's Summer Davos. And after rounds of discussions and brainstormings, how do you assess this year's theme, which is called the Next Frontier for Growth? Let's start with you.
Thank you. This meeting is always a tremendous opportunity to learn, to encourage dialogue, building bridges between North, South, East, and West, and of course make friends and enjoy Chinese food. This idea, the theme of this year is also related to technology, of course. Technology and AI has become a buzzword, but it's a very important buzzword that we need to learn more and enjoy what is happening here.
What about you, Mr. Alex?
So I come to China often, and I see how it's changing over time, always for the better. So it's always mind-blowing how the country is emerging and becoming a very serious player, in many cases, number one player in many areas of science and technology. So here at Davos, I learned a lot, met a lot of people, despite the very obvious geopolitical tensions around the world. Summer Davos managed to attract many top stakeholders and technology players from all around the world. And it was very clear that China is becoming more open. China is becoming more aware of what is happening geopolitically and is taking all the right steps to ameliorate those tensions. We also see a very large number of technology entrepreneurs from all over China, many of them unicorns, presenting pretty groundbreaking work, something that we did not expect to see within a short period of time. So the technology development and advances in scientific technology are just groundbreaking. Another thing that really impressed me is that so the Premier Li Cheng gave two talks, one to the general audience, another one to entrepreneurs and large companies, and made very clear statements. So one is that the country is very focused on science and technology, so it's very, very clear. Second, it's becoming more open and open to global collaboration. And third, huge emphasis on clean energy and clean tech.
And that's exactly we're gonna go deeper later in our show. What about you? What's your overall impression about this year's Davos?
Sure. No, super excited to be here. My panelists have already, touched on a lot of these points. But again, having the Summer Davos in China represents the importance of China in the global scene. Now, I've been to Dalian for a long time, have seen, as my fellow panelists mentioned, the transition that has happened from a technology adopter to a technology pioneer. When you look at, some of the other aspects that I saw in this meeting is that the underlying themes that are redefining our lives are healthcare, AI, and clean tech. So that is what is covered here. So it's a very complete story, complete picture of what's going to influence our lives over the next decade, 2 decades, the next century. So that's why I felt this is a very complete meeting. The other aspect of the meeting that is pretty interesting is that it doesn't only kind of cover the technology aspect of it, but it also covers the product aspect of it. So there's like financiers here, there are policymakers here, there are thought leaders here. So that gives an amazing opportunity for a tech founder from Silicon Valley to be able to access information and connections across the board. And of course, big fan of Chinese food. So Chinese food never hurt anyone. So that is an added advantage. Have past connections, so reconnecting with my friends. As I get more mature and as China, kind of also gets more mature in terms of the global forum is amazing. Yeah, so very happy.
Yeah, so as just what you three just mentioned, high-tech innovation is definitely a key word for this year's Summer Davos. And that's also what China has been highlighting over the past few years as well. So what do you make of the achievements when it comes to the high-tech development in China in particular? Just from you.
So the first one, of course, is electrical vehicles. So China did not excel in traditional vehicles. However, has been is a leader in electrical vehicles and the whole ecosystem of mobility, drones, etc. So then, of course, lithium batteries. So the whole ecosystem has been at the forefront of this new phase of technology development in China. That will be very disruptive. There is, of course, these days we have this new tariff from the European Union has been as a shock for both leaders in the traditional automotive industry that were always US and Europe, and find ways to defend their own industry. So we are in interesting times, but clearly China has become a leader in this space. Also mobile payments. China has been advanced in global mobile payments. At first because credit card now UnionPay is the biggest credit card company in the world, but at that time UnionPay and other credit cards were not that common in China. So then very early on Alipay and then WeChat Pay were launched, and mobile payments, QR codes is so prevalent, and so 80% of the payments in China are through this method. So to mention two, but of course we see more and more AI and others. Face recognition, another leadership from China. So to mention a few.
Yeah. What about you, Mr. Allen?
Well, I just want to resonate. So electric vehicles, there is no denial that China is now number one in the world, also with penetration of electric vehicles. You see them on the street, you don't need to talk about it anymore, it's already here. Also, autonomous driving is a big topic, and China can employ, in addition to onboard cameras, it can also employ CCTV footage and ensure that it's even safer than anywhere else. And of course, advances in healthcare. So the world population is aging. We get more diseases as we age. We get more vulnerable. And China is presenting multiple advances in this area. One is, of course, now it's becoming a player at the innovative drug discovery field, which is actually very good because this area is super risky. So as a matter of fact, if you were to ask anyone in the field, did China ever discover a truly novel drug approved by the FDA? Many experts would say no. But now it's attempting to do that. In addition to providing services, it is now taking more risks to bet on this new technology development for the world, right? Because now if 98% of new drugs fail, so the more bets people make, the better. And now China is becoming a player in this molecular casino for the best of the world. And finally, humanoid robotics. So I've never seen anything like that. So pretty much any city in China hosts several companies that are going after humanoids. So it means that when we get older, we will have humanoid helpers, which means it's going to have a significant impact on the quality of our lives And also, we should expect the future to be much better than the past and much better than the present, thanks to this science and technology advances, specifically humanoid robotics. Humanoid robotics are going to change our life. We are already deploying them in our lab as well to help with research and some of the very mundane tasks. They're going to be taking care of us when we're older.
So healthcare and new energy vehicle sector. I know that you are an expert in a battery company, which I think is also one of China's, an area that China is good at. So what's your take on the achievements in this sector
Sure.
or in the overall picture?
No, absolutely. So my background, of course, is semiconductors, batteries, robotics, so have deep tech experience. And the way I look at it is that, as I mentioned previously, when a nation transitions from a follower, adopter to a leader, that nation becomes a product-focused nation. So that's where when my fellow panelists were kind of highlighting some of the achievements, these are product achievements. So China is demonstrating that. When it comes to smartphones, Apple started the smartphone revolution, but then Huawei, Vivo, Apple, they took over pretty much that smartphone generation, if I might. Then you look at EVs, that was like category redefining, that totally changed a century-old ICE engine driven automotive industry. China took leadership there. Similarly, humanoid robotics, I go to sushi places in the US and you will see these tiny little robots carrying plates of sushi for you. It's called Chichiren, I think, the tiny little thing, it will get you a glass of water. So those are user experiences. Alipay, WeChat Pay, those redefined payment categories, and then Apple Pay followed, as opposed to Apple smartphone followed by a Huawei smartphone. So that's where, as a leader and pioneer, cementing its position in the world, now Chinese innovators, entrepreneurs, the Chinese industry and the government is thinking about how to create category leading products to make the lives of people, not only within China, but globally better. So that is where I see this tectonic shift in the thought process, in the approach to building technology, and very amazed, very kind of impressed by just the change in the DNA that has happened. Earlier you would speak to people, they were like, can you teach me this, can you teach me that? Now they don't say, can you teach me this? They are like, my fellow friends are like, hey, we discovered this, we are working on this, do you think this is cool? So that I think is the major shift I see, not only in terms of like the people, in terms of the thinking of the people, in terms of the nation being ready to really lead the charge. So that would be my take. I'm a product-focused person, so we'll speak in terms of the product. Yeah.
Very inspiring. And in fact, in addition to China, the role and the prominence of high technologies also increasing in the emerging market, not only China, but also other developing countries as well. And as an expert in this area, what do you make of this future trend from emerging markets that make them more competitive?
So I mentioned mobile payments, and I mentioned them in China, but other emerging markets have followed. Again, lack of penetration of credit cards, the fact that credit cards are very expensive for the retailer. So then so in India, for instance, we have UPI. UPI was additionally developed by the government and has taken India by storm. Everybody pays with UPI. It's more recent than WeChat Pay or Alipay, but definitely. And another one I would like to mention is Pix in Brazil. Pix was developed by the Central Bank of Brazil in a group of banks, and again has taken Brazil by a storm. Wow. But then a predecessor of that was Kenya, M-Pesa. So M-Pesa was an early product of mobile payments that was for 2G phones. 2G phones could send very small micro microtransfers, sometimes $1 or $2, from the city to the countryside, so from the son or the daughter who are in the city, sending back home. And still today is a tremendous success, and that's very important. And then we see also other things, e-commerce platforms. We have Amazon and we have Alibaba, of course, as the bigger players, but then you have regional players, Jumia in Africa, you have also Mercado Libre in Latin America, and both have been able to resist and win against the competition from these big players because very early on they introduced mobile payments. They introduced a subsidiary that allows these mobile payments. So you see a lot of innovation coming, and you see that this innovation allows financial inclusion and allows other to benefit, and in general they are very inclusive. So we have many, and again the last one is not a coincidence that central bank digital currencies are at the retail level launched in emerging markets. Is a consequence of this prevalence of mobile payments. Mm-hmm. So we see that this can help leapfrogging.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, she just talked about the many opportunities and many successful examples in emerging markets. What do you make of the reasons behind those success? What do you think are some of the advantages that make these emerging markets successful in developing their high technologies?
Sure. Well, one of the reasons, and we need to actually thank the US government for that quite a bit, is the availability of open science. So in the early 90s, the new trend started where globalization and collaboration were very famous words. And much of the government-funded science around the world became publicly available. Yeah. And now this massive knowledge that is published in research papers is available to everybody worldwide. The barriers to entry into emerging technologies for emerging countries are now much lower. With the advancements of AI and specifically tools that are generative, train on those massive amounts of publicly available data, allow countries to go into areas that have never been even touched before. And here, those countries now can utilize China's manufacturing capabilities and also synthesis, test, clinical trials, eliminating the barriers to entry into ultra-high technology areas like drug discovery, for example. Previously, very few countries in the world have ever discovered a drug. Now, any country with enough money that is willing to place a bet on an innovative therapeutic, they can utilize those generative systems, including those produced by my company, trained on the entire world, to identify new protein targets, to generate small molecules, and then come to China, synthesize, test, manufacture, and do clinical trials, establish evidence in humans, and then sell this drug for the world for everyone, because all of us are patients when it comes to aging, and most of us will be patients when it comes to major diseases. So now the barriers to entry into those areas that are benefiting everybody globally have been reduced. Thanks to the globalization, now we see the globalization trends, which is deeply frustrating to me. But in the past, that was the case, and now it's benefiting everybody.
Yeah, now it was the case, but in some areas it might not be the case, because we know that now China is facing the criticism from Western countries, including European Union and the United States, what they claim overcapacity in its high-tech firm. So as an expert in high-tech manufacturing industry, what's your take on that, and how will that affect the high-tech manufacturing industry in China?
Sure. So first of all, she stole my thunder. I wanted to speak about the UPI, payments in India. So, but thank you for sharing that. But I think it's a very relevant question. When you look at, the way China has developed manufacturing, or I don't even think about manufacturing, I think about end solutions. Product is an end solution. The way China develops end solution is China goes like, from cradle to grave, like end to end. So, everything is thought of. It's not only the end product, it's the entire value chain that is developed, the entire process that is developed. And because of command over each step in the process, you are able to leverage scale at each process. And the stack up happens, and you are able to produce a lot very fast because you get high yields, everything is working because everything is connected, and you are able to manufacture very cheaply. You are able to provide that end solution very cheaply.
Yeah.
Now, of course, in terms of overcapacity, again, I believe that overcapacity is never designed, because overcapacity is not good for anyone, because you have to then, start selling at, cost. You don't make profit. Nobody wants to not make profit. Nobody wants to work hard and not, reap the benefits. So overcapacity, I think, is not, by design. It is by the influence of, maybe bad predictions as to what the market will be, and the market not panning out. For example, EVs, people say about, batteries.
I think there's no overcapacity if there's no trade barriers.
Yeah.
Because the global market is huge enough.
Exactly.
It's never over, right?
Yeah.
Do you agree with me?
Yeah.
I agree with you, and overcapacity is in business.
Yes.
We can think of overcapacity in chips right now, but we could see overcapacity in a few years. Why? Because all countries want to enter the space, from Brazil to Vietnam, and of course the European Union and the US are putting a lot of money to bring back the capacity. So there is a lot of demand. We see that demand is infinite, and we may see overcapacity. So it's a fact of business. It's not only about predictions, but as of today, yes, we need more chips, and we rely too much on TSMC, only one company. So then the risks inherent to that. So everybody is a rush into creating manufacturing capability in something that is super expensive, but everybody is doing it. So we could see overcapacity in chips in a few years, for instance. So it's a fact of business, and then with time, the market corrects by itself. But as you are saying, in EVs, no overcapacity, because definitely it's a new product, and it's need everywhere in the world for the green transition.
And I would like to add on the other part. We covered the overcapacity, but there was two elements to the question. The other was the criticism that the government is facing. So what I want to say there is, again, China has become a leader now, and when you look at a team player versus a leader, the thought process is different. A team player is trying to do their agenda. They're trying to be successful only by themselves, whereas a leader is successful if its team players are successful. That is the nature of a truly mature leader. So as China kind of provides that leadership, just a recommendation would be that if you look at the US or Europe, when they took leadership, one of the ways to share the benefit was to invest in the startup ecosystem of the markets that you're going into, so that you can actually nurture, like a baby, their startup ecosystem and partner and share the spoils of the war. So I think that would be super amazing if the large scaling Chinese companies come to emerging economies and nurture the startup ecosystem and build hand in hand together, so that everyone can be successful collectively. Yeah. Because that's one way I would address the criticism.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think being a provider or a leader in our industry is not contradictory to creating more opportunities for collaboration for other countries. Yeah. And that's also in line with the intention of many like Belt and Road Initiative and other initiatives that China initiated, yeah. Right? Yeah. So I think innovation couldn't happen in a vacuum. Yeah. It's always all about collaboration. Yeah. Collaboration really matters.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so, and we talked about the significance of high-tech innovation. It's really fueling every sector. It's almost everywhere. And high-tech manufacturing is also a very significant part of China's ambition in becoming a high-tech power, it's launched a Made in China 2025 plan, which is a state-led industrial policy that seeks to make China dominant in global tech manufacturing. So what do you think are the advantages in achieving this goal?
So, I come from high tech. I guess, everyone was looking at me. So I'll take that question. When you look at an initiative such as, Made in China, Global Leader by 2025, that is an amazing way to start a journey, because you're very clear as to what the goal is, what problem you're solving, what, your aspirations are, what, you have to build towards. So having a clear goal is always good for execution and achieving that goal. Now, one of the things that happens when you have a clear goal like that, especially in manufacturing, is that you become too focused on the end result, which is the product. Like, for example, chips, or for example, batteries or EVs. But in order to meet those goals, the entire value chain needs to grow at the same pace. And sometimes what happens is, for the lack of a better term, the non-sexy part, basically, which is not the, a consumer-facing product, that gets neglected. So that is where, to truly be able to meet those demanding, and mostly, schedules are very, very stringent, very demanding. There needs to be eyes on the prize, which is the end product, but simultaneously, the enabling factors need to come up, and due, diligence, due, care needs to be given. Funding needs to be, technology development needs to be given to the value chain to be actually able to do that successfully. I think China does a pretty good job of scaling the value chain end to end. So pretty impressed, by the way.
I think not only China, many emerging markets now have their own advantages to make them more competitive in the pursuit of their innovative dreams. But there are also challenges ahead for emerging markets as well. For example, the technology gap, right, and the fragmentation. So what's your take on these challenges, and how can we solve these problems?
Yeah, so then when we talk about artificial intelligence, we forget that behind there is a tremendous consumption of electricity. So you need, number one, a very you need overcapacity in electricity, because you need so much. That's number one. Second, of course, an excellent broadband system that allows fast internet. Third, let's don't forget skills, not only engineers, but engineers with knowledge of AI. Fourth, you need also regulation, institutions that support and at the same time overview the capacity. And another thing that we forget is languages, because so far most of the AI, most of the Gen AI is in English. Many governments right now are having agreements with private companies to develop AI tools in different languages. So you need this whole infrastructure. There is a deficit in infrastructure, in hard and soft skills in many emerging markets. China is not the case, but the rest, yes. So then it could be that we would increase the gap. So instead of closing the gap, that AI could help closing the gap, at first we'll be seeing widening the gap. And last but not least, what happens with emerging markets, and I was with a minister of Nigeria in one of the panels, and he was saying, we cannot talk about AI. We cannot talk about environment. We first need minimum infrastructure. So the development model of China has been different from other emerging markets. China very early on started investing in both, in improving the lives and the infrastructure of their own country, and then betting for the medium and the long term. But that was, for instance, China has just brought from the dark side of the moon some part of the earth of the moon, to analyze it here. But it has been at the cost of many Chinese sacrificing. Salaries are lower, apartments are smaller than in other countries. So the whole population has sacrificed, saying we believe in the advancement of China. So for me, in China in particular, the challenge is more cultural, and this consensus that has been happening for 40 years, will it continue now that China is becoming richer? Will most Chinese continue sacrificing for the good of the country. That's for me.
Perhaps not all Chinese agree with what you said. They may not see it as a sacrifice. They just they're willing to do whatever is good
for
their,
the country,
for their generation, for their for their younger generation, for themselves as well. And also, we've talked about many advantages and also barriers when it comes to facing the emerging markets. And I remember that once Shrep has said that when we talk about technological innovation now, it's not just about technology itself, but also a whole system, which I couldn't agree more. And there's even a report published during this year's Summer Davos highlighting the risks of the equity concerns, right? It says that many high-tech innovation application scenarios are in high-income countries. And I think that is also one of the major problems in healthcare sector as well. For example, the uneven distribution of healthcare resources. So what's your take on that, and how can we address these issues?
So I actually disagree that developed nations have a dramatic advantage over emerging countries right now in technology, because technology is becoming democratized very quickly, and the barriers to entry are becoming much lower. Like, think of a cell phone. So now pretty much every Chinese or Indian has a cell phone because they have to pay with a cell phone. The cell phone is the window to the world because now it's a learning device, it's the device to create. It enables everyone to be a part of the ecosystem. So if you are really good and if you really want to contribute, you can with your cell phone. So that brings a lot of capacity and capabilities to the emerging countries. And also, if you want to be a little bit more advanced, you can come to China or order here and materialize your dreams in an emerging country, right? You don't need to build the infrastructure. Right now, one of the barriers that I see for technological development in general is deglobalization. So I have to say that, right, because I am kind of a little bit against that. It's very bad for humanity because any kind of decoupling or nationalism or polarization of the society is bad for health, because currently there are very, very few drugs out there. Actually, if you think about it, the FDA approves about 50 drugs every year. About maybe 20 of them are truly innovative. So most countries have never developed and discovered a drug. Most diseases are incurable. Currently, we don't have the tools to live significantly longer. We can die very wealthy and with a bunch of apartments, but you cannot buy time. And that's a fundamental problem, right? So I want to provide people with the ability to live longer, healthier lives if they're willing to work for it a little bit. And that ability to discover those novel therapeutics is inhibited by very strange geopolitical trends. So now, in the past, the world was like this. It was a bell curve. So people agreed that there are fundamental issues that need to have collaboration. And now it's becoming like this, where the world is polarized, even within specific countries. They cannot agree. And we need to ensure that we survive that period where there is significant deglobalization. We don't choose one side. We are true to the fundamental values that, human health is the ultimate priority. Human life is the ultimate priority. We need to deliver medications. And to do this, we need to discover them. The timeline for drug discovery and development is usually 10 years. It costs $2 billion per drug to get discovered. It requires massive collaboration and more people to contribute. And if there is any kind of decoupling, deglobalization, it hurts our ability to get those life-saving drugs. Right now, everybody in this room has a chance to live maybe to 120, maybe longer, in good health. Any deglobalization effort will inhibit those chances.
Exactly, and deglobalization or polarization is also taking place in the high-tech sector. It's, for example, Beijing has repeatedly requested the United States to remove its restrictions that prevent China from purchasing the advanced technologies from U.S. firms, and also primarily reiterated his stance that at the opening ceremony that high-tech sector, high-tech innovation should have been used as an excuse to hinder other countries' development. So, what do you make of this stance?
So, before I answer that, my esteemed panelist said that, you cannot buy time, but I'm pretty sure the Chinese will figure that out, how to buy time.
I really hope so, inshallah, right?
So you can leave it to the Chinese to figure out how to buy time. But jokes apart, I'm going to, kind of what panelists said resonates with me. We live in an increasingly global, setting. And global is not only in terms of physical access, like pretty much every place is connected to every other place, but also in terms of information and knowledge transfer. Like literally, as he mentioned, everyone in India, China, and those are like the largest populations in the world, pretty much half of the world, has access to a smartphone. And you have access to Wikipedia. I used to, when I was a child, I used to, have to go to the library and find these encyclopedias and, read those encyclopedias to, gain information. Now I go to Wikipedia. I cannot live without Wikipedia. And Wikipedia hasn't paid me to advertise them, by the way, disclaimer here. But other information sources, similarly, when you looked at Tesla, Tesla, very famously, I did a paper on them in 2013. They were like, Elon was like, I don't believe in, kind of siloing information and knowledge. Knowledge is for everyone to access, the democratization of knowledge, information. So Tesla was like, we're not going to patent, we're going to open all the patents. And that helped a lot of, including the Chinese, car makers, I'm pretty sure. So that kind of like technology transfer, knowledge access, everything is happening globally.
You just mentioned Tesla. I think the Shanghai factory in Tesla is also a very good example of how collaboration between China and the United States contribute to the entire industry, the entire EV industry. And that's in line with the benefit for people all across the globe. So as I just mentioned earlier, innovation cannot happen in a vacuum. So collaboration is truly at the heart of a true transformative innovation. So it is particularly critical, especially for the emerging markets, to collaborate in the pursuit of their high-tech innovation ambition. So, and I think that is in line with the purpose of the Summer Davos, or the Davos, right? That's why we're here together, all the experts from all across the world, from all walks of life, to exchange their views in order to work more effectively and also more unitedly for the global economic growth.
That makes perfect sense. Don't want to like interrupt you. That's the messaging. Like you have to message, like what are you trying to do in the right way. And I hope, all of us being here from like different walks of life, different parts of the US, you have, from China, of course, we are talking to Chinese audience. I hope that the messaging, it's all in the messaging. Silicon Valley Bank went down because the CEO messaged it incorrectly. So it's about the messaging, and the messaging should be exactly as you said. It's collaborative. There are skill sets gaps in the emerging economies. Let's partner, let's collaborate, and let's educate and bring that skill set gap, fill that skill set gap in the emerging market. So that exactly what I was thinking. I just am re-emphasizing it for the effect, but yeah, that's well said,
Totally agreed. So thanks again for your time and insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that will do it for this edition of Groundbreakers with CGTN. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.